Hello and welcome to the DFS Coach Talk podcast. Today is February 26th, and we are here to go over an awesome 9-game main slate with our members and our listeners. I am Joe Sarvati, affectionately known as Coach, and I am joined by the GPP guru, along with Mr. Mike Apotria, Mr. Andrew Hansen. How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing well, Coach. Yeah, this is an awesome slate. It's got a little bit of everything, and what we love about DFS is that every day is different, keeps us on our toes, and we've got high totals, low totals, back-to-backs, injuries, the whole gamut. So this will be fun to break down.
Yeah, it is. It is got a little bit of everything, that's for sure, and it's going to make for a fun slate. We've talked about this a lot of times. The more games, the better. So I am absolutely loving it. No doubt about it. And we had a great night last night. I know you had some broadcasting duties and couldn't really jump in on the fun, but man, we really top 2% finish in a bunch of tournaments and cash games were over the top. So it's you gotta love when you finish like second out of 100 in a 50-50. It makes you feel pretty darn relaxed down the stretch,
Absolutely, because then hopefully you also put the cash lineup in the GPP line, GPP tournament just in case.
Yeah.
And that's how I always like to do it. But yeah, great night for DFS Coach Talk, and excited to try to go do it again tonight.
It really was. And that brings up a good point I want to mention real quickly is, I put out the cash lineups 7 days a week for us for Fantasy Draft and for DraftKings and FanDuel. And Andrew and Michael split pretty much doing the GPP lines, but just so you folks out there know, and then obviously I've shared this with our members, but my lineups are cash lineups. However, they just have a little smidgen of hybrid in there because I don't really build GPP lineups. So just like you said, Andrew, it's like, if I really like a line, I'll cross it over and play it on both sides of the coin with cash and GPP. So I just wanted to bring this up because, I've had people ask me that a lot is, they'll just strictly play it, just completely on cash. And if you enter the right contests, I think at least on my lineups, you can cross play them as well.
Yeah, if you think about it, in cash you want those high floor guys, but it's not like you're going to cross somebody out if they also have a high ceiling, right? You'll take a high floor, high ceiling guy, put him in a cash lineup, and he works pretty well in a GPP too.
You better believe it, man. That's a great point. I wanted to mention too, I am personally in those cash lineups 55 and 22 on the season, so I'm keeping my head above that 70% mark and actually jumping up just a smidgen. So that's my big goal for the year. I think a really lofty goal. If you can win 70% of your cash games, I think you're going to be pretty darn good ahead in the long run. That's for sure. So, and the cool thing is at Coach Talk, as everybody knows, we're new. Not that we're new to this world because we've done podcasts together, Andrew and Mike and I, for a year. We have come over from Hoopball to do just the DFS stuff. Still have a great relationship with Hoopball and really going to try to send the year-long stuff over there. And I think, they're going to push some of the DFS stuff back here too. So it's a nice world that everybody gets along in sometimes. You know what I mean?
Gotta love it.
Gotta love it. All right, we're diving into this slate with no further ado because it's a 9-game slate. 9 games is nothing to play with. You got a lot of stuff to go over. And unfortunately, Andrew, you're probably going to fall asleep. You could probably go have a ham and cheese sandwich and a cup of coffee because I've got to read down a player news injury report that is longer than the Encyclopedia Britannica, which do young kids even know what that is? That's what I
No,
want to
they
know.
don't. They
They
know
have
what
no clue.
Google is, and that's all they need.
Well, let's just say if you tried to take all of Google and put it in a book, that's about the big size Encyclopedia
Exactly.
Britannica you get. All right, here I go. I'm going to fire it down. DeAndre Hunter confirmed he's playing. Big one. Trae Young, 50-50 questionable. Think that's going to shift the slate? Then you got Wayne Ellington probable for the Knicks. Frank Ntilikina is out. Brandon Clark, you stinking, he killed me the other night. He is out. At least we know he wasn't faking the injury. He's got a right quad and he will not play. Kelly Oubre remains out for this game against the Clippers. Willie Cauley-Stein, 50-50. Davis Bertans, questionable 50-50. That's an important one. Couple of guys that are out that I don't think get much play. Alfonso McKinney and Dante Exum from Cleveland. Probably just pumps up the three guards from Cleveland in Sexton, Garland, and Porter Jr., who had a monster game last time out. Here's another key piece. Jimmy Butler, 50-50 questionable. We really need to know that news. LaMarcus Aldridge is out, which is big news for sure. That's against the Mavericks, so he'll be out for the Spurs. Now trying to figure out what Pop's going to do with that rotation. With Aldridge out is like trying to figure out, if you've read the ACA Act, trying to figure out what everything means in there. But that's going to be a tough one. DeAndre Bembry out. Dwayne Dedman, probable. Alan Crabb, Micah Patria's top 5 players. He is out. He's sitting out because he has no Chicken Soup Challenge to play for. Wilson Chandler from Brooklyn, questionable. That's important. He's been getting some minutes. Elf Payton is probable. So for those of us that jumped on the Dennis Smith for a day at that low price and he went bonkers, that was beautiful. But now we've got Elf Payton back, and he will probably take over the majority of those duties against the woeful Charlotte Hornets. Eric Gordon is important. He's questionable, but this says 60%. So, in other words, he was listed as questionable, but the news from early shoot-around makes it look more like he's going to play. So I think keep an eye on it, but that's a guy we may want to count in. Russell Westbrook is playing. Patrick Beverley is back. Paul George is in. Eli Akobo in. Dario Saric in. Aaron Baines and DeAndre Ayton in. So all those Phoenix guys that have been bubbling in and out are all in. Here's one that came back that we may have forgotten even existed. Jake Layman. He is confirmed in for Minnesota. When's the last time he played?
Seems like forever ago.
Yeah, I mean, has he played this year? I don't think he's played this year.
I'm going to have to look it up. That's a good trivia question.
I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. And then Luka has been confirmed in for anybody that was worried about him not playing. So, again, very comprehensive list, but very important list to know. Let's dive in. 3 7:00 games. First one is the New York Knicks at the Charlotte Hornets. Now can it get worse than that?
No.
I didn't think so. It is, and here's just more fun to add to the mixture. You had Graham for Charlotte sit out the last game, but I guess that was load management, and he is going to play in this game. But it is the second night of a back-to-back for Charlotte, and it's the first night of a back-to-back for the Knicks. So not only do they all stink, they're playing back-to-backs all over the place. And this is the second lowest total I've seen this season. The Knicks somehow are a 1.5-point road favorite, and the total is 208. You've got 105 implied for the Knicks, 103 for Charlotte. From the pace standpoint, the Knicks are 21st, Charlotte slowest team in the NBA. Defensively, it gets just as bad. They are 23rd and 24th, respectively. So, Junk City game, not one that's going to be fun to try to roster. But there's a few guys I have a smidgen of interest in here. What about you?
Well, yeah, from an overall standpoint, this is not a very attractive game by any means. And I do think Graham is a bit of a wild card here. You know, you mentioned the rest purposes, load management, may have also been shooting slump management. 1 for 17 in his last 2 games before getting the night off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't imagine playing him in cash.
No.
I leave that to you, and I don't plan to. Yeah, I don't plan to play him in tournaments either. But if you do multi-enter, I'd probably get 1 share of him just in case he takes advantage of the rest and comes out and maybe he turns it around. You get him at low ownership, but with that low total that you mentioned, I don't have much interest in this game. Just looking at the pricing, I did notice that R.J. Barrett, on DraftKings, he's $6K, but on FanDuel, he's only 4.8.
Yeah.
So, and we do like playing wings against Charlotte, so he's a guy I'll consider, but, not much else.
I'm with you, man. I mean, the only 2 guys, like I said, I'd consider from this game that I'm looking slightly at are Elf and R.J. Barrett. Those two guards against Charlotte should have some success, and I know Peyton's just coming back from missing a game, so I'm not going to race to him, but I'm going to look at those guys a little bit. Right now they're just on the outside looking in, so if there's other news, I may roster one of those guys, but there's also a good chance that this game I'll just be dark.
Absolutely. I wouldn't blame you for that.
All right, game 2, Philadelphia 76ers at the Cleveland Cavs. It's also a 7 o'clock game. Philly is a 7.5-point road favorite. The total is 216.5, second lowest total. Seems like we've been getting low total dud games early, like almost every night, and you got to wait for your guys to get playing. I don't know. Maybe it's just the same group of crappy East teams playing early, I guess, on a consistent basis. But
exactly.
Yeah. As far as pace, Philly's 18th, Cleveland 19th, so both below average. And then you've got Philly with their stellar 5th-ranked defense, which is solid. But then you have the infamous Cleveland dead last now, worse than Washington defensively. And you've got, my theory of no matter what, you have to play at least one of the backcourt guards against Cleveland. And I know I beat that like a dead horse, but I can't help it. But Philly has a 112 implied total and Cleveland 104.5. So, and if I didn't mention it the last game, it's Knicks 105, Charlotte 103. So that's pretty pathetic. But I guess on the Philly side, Ben Simmons is probably one of my pillar plays of the day, and I know he's so damn expensive. But
yeah, you mean Embiid, right?
No, I'm talking about Ben Simmons. Oh, Simmons is out. What am I talking about? Simmons is hurt. Not Ben Simmons. I'm talking about Josh Richardson is what I meant to say.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
sorry.
So you are going with the wing player. All right.
Yeah, wing point-ish kind of player. I think Richardson, I don't want to go like Raul Neto and all those guys that are going to split time there. I feel Josh's minutes are the safest, and if I'm going to force a guard in for Philly, then I want it to be Richardson. So I don't, and I think he'll go pretty low owned because he's had some clunker games in there. And then, Tobias Harris has played good ball, and I don't mind him at all. I think he's going to be a guy on the bubble for me. I'm not going Joel Embiid just because the pace of this game, and just it could be so ugly that nobody is able to really make value on a big fat salary like Embiid's or even Drummond's. Same thing with Kevin Love. I just not comfortable going to any of those spots. So, Richardson's my first look. I like Tobias Harris a little bit. I don't really want all that rotation of the other wing and guard players for Philly. So, I'm going to go after a couple Philly guys here and be done with it.
Yeah, I like it. I'm also going to fade Embiid. Potential blowout here, front end of a back-to-back. May not need to play full minutes. If I'm going to play a big, I'd rather play Horford. I also will consider Tobias Harris.
Horford, oh my God.
Al Horford, my man. He's only 5K on DraftKings.
He's playing like a 5K guy, though. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, maybe for tournaments. He's going to wake up and remember that he's Al Horford here soon enough. One of these games when he's in the starting lineup and Ben Simmons is out. So this could be the night. This could be the night. We got plenty of bigs on the Cleveland side that he, is going to want to match up against. But yeah, I'm with you on Richardson. I like him here. I'll even take a look at Shake Milton at 4.5.
I bet Shake is way higher owned than Richardson, which I think I get it, but I still don't think that's right. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean he is cheaper, but probably not cheaper enough to justify being much higher owned than Richardson. I agree. So
he'll be double Richardson.
Really interesting.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. But I'm with you on Cleveland. I'm not going to play anybody over there. Too many bigs, too much uncertainty with the minutes, and Philly's just too good on defense, top 5. So I'm going to fade the Cavs.
I agree with you, man. I think we'll be in the majority there. This is definitely not a Cleveland type rostering scenario. All right, there's a third 7 o'clock game, which is nice because we'll have 6 teams full lineups, 30 minutes before tip in case we need to do a little shuffling. But it's Brooklyn at Washington. It seems like, I don't know, maybe it's just us or maybe it's the scenario, but seems like I always watch Washington games because I always have 2 or 3 or 4 guys in that game. I know it's because it's no secret. Washington's the 5th fastest pace and second to last defense in the entire league, and they had been last for quite some time. Brooklyn's a 2-point road favorite, as I said, 234, which is a very nice number. Second highest on the board, as Washington usually is. Brooklyn has an implied of 118 and Washington 116. And like I said, they're the 10th and 5th fastest pace. So you got 2 top 10 paces. Brooklyn is 7th defensively, though, so they've really, really tightened it up. So that hurts a little bit. Plus, how in the hell, Beal's coming off 250-plus real point games. So I don't know how long you can ride that horse without him falling over. So I don't know. What are you going to do here?
Well, I will have some exposure to Beal. I'll admit it. I doubted that he was going to come back and score 50 against Milwaukee.
I couldn't believe it either.
I thought he emptied the tank in Chicago. I did not expect that. But I'm not going to bet against him again. I mean, he's on a mission right now. You mentioned the high total. He scored 34 against these guys early in the season. And I like some of these guys that are under the 10K price range a little bit better than the stars on this slate. So I'll have some Beal. On that side, I'm also going to look at Troy Brown Jr. He disappointed me against Milwaukee. But on DraftKings, he's only 4K. A little bit more expensive on FanDuel. So, as you mentioned with Bertans questionable, if he's out, more minutes to go around there on the bench.
Yeah.
So I'll take a look there, hope for a bounce back. And then on the Brooklyn side, we like playing wings against Beal. So for me, it's Harris and LeVert are the 2 guys to consider. With Harris, he's the same price on both sites. You get that 3-point bonus on DraftKings. so I like him over there a little bit more. But Levert really is the main guy for me on the Brooklyn side. His usage has really been increasing with Kyrie out, so
Yeah,
he's going to be my main play from Brooklyn.
solid. For me, this game's pretty simple. I'm going right straight to Dinwiddie and Levert, not even playing any games. Washington doesn't defend well. They looked a little defeated, especially Beal after the end of the last game. I mean, he had that look on his face like, I just scored back-to-back 50-point games. We lost both games. What the hell's going on? So I don't know. I just don't think they're going to play as well from an offensive standpoint. And, we know they're poor on defense. So I'm sort of all about Dinwiddie and Levert in this game. And with all the uncertainty with Washington's other guys, they're splitting between Napier and Smith. So that makes them almost unplayable to me because I hate split minutes. And then they've got that massive rotation of all the big guys that are back. And then Bertans not being sure. Just too much of a headache for me. So I'm sticking with Brooklyn guys and not even going to mess with Washington for the first time in a while.
Okay.
All right, man, we go on to game 4. It's a 7:30 game. The Orlando Magic against the Atlanta Hawks. So you've got the opposite ends of the spectrum here. Orlando's a 3.5-point road favorite. They are the total in this game is 225, 114 for Orlando, 111 for Atlanta. And as far as pace goes, you got like I say, the flipped numbers on pace and defensive efficiency. Orlando's 28th in pace, where Atlanta's 4th. Orlando's 8th on defense, where Atlanta's 28th. So the old adage, what wins when you have good offense against bad defense and bad defense against good offense? What's the plan here?
Yeah, that's a tough question. All I know is that I'm going to be following the news on Trae Young. That's the only thing I know.
Of course.
And got to check out these price tags on some of these backups, Teague and Goodwin. So that's where I'm going to start with Atlanta. Without that Trae Young news, I really wasn't interested in the Atlanta side very much.
Yeah.
I was more interested on the Orlando side. Vucevic, another 9K guy that I like. We like targeting the Atlanta bigs, and look what Embiid did against Atlanta earlier in the week. He almost had 50 points. So I like Vucevic here, and I think Aaron Gordon's in play as well.
Yeah, Atlanta just doesn't defend. I mean, I get it, but I don't like this game a lot to really advise on it until we know the Trae Young news, because that changes everything. Because if he doesn't play, you've got to take a serious look, in my opinion, at Collins and maybe Reddish or one of the wings, a Herder or something like that, because somebody's got to pick up the million shots that he takes. Even though Orlando's going to slow it down, I definitely want to look at a couple of those guys dependent. If he plays, then that eliminates those other ancillary guys for Atlanta. But I'm not going to play Trae in a game where Orlando's entire purpose for this game was going to be play a half-court D, slow it down, get the ball out of his hands as much as they can. Now, I agree with you on the Orlando side, playing such an up-tempo game against Atlanta. It seems like Gordon's been hot, so Gordon has to be, what I would say a decent consideration. And even Evan Fournier, I haven't dialed him up in probably a month, but, this seems like it'd be a great spot for him to get a lot of shots up. So, he may be the one that really jumps up the most with the up pace and just more possessions. I don't want to spend all my money on Vuk. I know that it's probably not a bad play, but he's just too expensive for me. And that's it for me in that game.
Yeah, and let me just throw in a couple more pieces of data here.
Mm-hmm.
in case Trae Young is out, last time he missed, Teague got the start, played 25 minutes. Goodwin got 27 minutes off the bench, took 15 shots, and Herter took 22 shots in that
Yeah.
game against Boston. So there are going to be some much more
Did
attractive price tags there.
did they have Reddish and Hunter in that game though? I don't believe they did have both.
That is a good call. Hunter played, Reddish did not.
Okay, because that changes the dynamic as well. Because I think, first of all, I want nothing to do with those two guys that are splitting, Teague and the other guy. They're both going to split minutes. And then I think Herter gets kicked down with both Hunter and Reddish playing, and they both get dialed up a little bit, but not quite enough to make it. So it's one of those tweener games that if Young's out, I just don't feel comfortable about. But I would like to grab one or two Magic just because Atlanta, they've given up the most points since the All-Star break. So you take that into consideration. And Orlando's not going to get in too many games where they're going to be in more of an up pace scenario. So I think you gotta look at Gordon and Fournier and even Vuk a little bit, and maybe a Fultz a little bit, but I don't really like that backcourt right now because Fultz, DJ Augustine, and Michael Carter Williams are really splitting responsibilities at the point. So good point though, man. You ready to go to the next one?
Let's do it.
Okay, the second 7:30 game, and then there's a third one. So we're going to have 6 games that start 7:30 or earlier. So we're going to know where we stand, and that's on the East Coast. It is Minnesota at Miami. Very, very, very intriguing game here to me. Miami's a 10-point favorite. We don't know if Butler's playing or not. That's monster news. The total's 233, so that's, you cannot complain about that at all. 121.5 for Miami and 111.5 for Minnesota. So 121.5 is the second biggest total on the board. Miami's been red hot. We know Cat's still out. I mean, Bam Adebayo is playing like an absolute animal. And I don't know how you don't consider him here. Because here's the scenario. You've got Minnesota, the 7th fastest team in the league. Miami's 26, so it's a big pace-up game for Miami. And then defensively, Minnesota's all the way down to 20th now, and the Heat are 13th. So, man, I'll tell you, I think you start with Bam and then build from there. What do you think?
Well, that's interesting. I do like the spot for Bam. Minnesota is certainly coming in with tired legs. Third night on the road, third game in 4 nights on the road.
Yeah.
He is 9K on DraftKings. That's unfortunate. I'm looking at none. Again, if Butler is out, and there is a big price difference for none. On DraftKings, he's 6.1, but on FanDuel, he's only 4.9.
Yeah, FanDuel refuses to move him up, and regardless of the fact that he's had like a good handful of fantasy points in the 40s. So I have no idea why he's so cheap on there.
Yeah, so I'm looking.
It's a misprice, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Over on the Minnesota side, one guy I want to mention is James Johnson. The narrative coming back to town.
Ooh, good point.
He's been getting a lot more minutes with Minnesota. I had a lot of shares of him in that game against Dallas, and he did well. Took advantage of the foul trouble from Naz Reid. But I'll have some shares of him. He's cheaper on DraftKings, 5.3.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
There
Narrative City on him, man. I mean, I think you got to play him. I mean, he's an emotional guy, although he's the kind of guy that he's going to be so juiced. He's either going to get in foul trouble or punch somebody in the face.
Right.
So, I don't know. I think that's a great play and a great call. I was going to mention him too, but not quite, to the point where he was going to be a shoo-in. But now I tell you, I don't know how you don't play him. I love this matchup for him coming back. Because they really did give up on him. So Didn't somebody else move over in that deal? Trying
Move
to
over
think of what
where
I thought somebody else went from out of Miami.
Winslow went to
Oh,
Memphis.
yeah, but Winslow went to Memphis, but he's still out. Okay, so that was part of that. All those guys moving around. Because they got Crowder back in that deal as well, and then they signed Iggy, so that was that deal. But wow, man, that would be. I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to sit back and watch Bam and James Johnson just try to see who could break the backboard on their dunks. That would be a blast. Um, Obviously, though, it all depends on the scenario with Butler. If Butler's out, I like all three guys I've been playing. I mean, Duncan Robinson's been knocking threes down left and right. Kendrick Nunn, like you said, is mispriced. He is an absolutely uh, fine play, and Goran Dragic, he's consistently produced off the bench with some big numbers, and Minnesota is not a good defensive team. Other than Johnson on that side, I don't mind D'Angelo Russell, but his price tag needs to come down some more. If it was a little lower, I'd feel better about it. But I really don't trust anybody else on that side of the ball. So I can see myself with Johnson and a couple of Heat players, and then move on.
I'm with you.
All right, man, we've got 5 down, 4 to go. I want to mention real quickly, go to DFSCoachTalk.com. That's our website. All kinds of information on there. Get to see, who our group is that's heading this project up. Check out all kinds of different good information on there. And you can also email questions or anything like that. And we've got some upgrades already, even though we've only been rocking and rolling for a week. We're going to have some interactive stuff on there and different ways to sign up and et cetera. So all that is in the works. Follow us on Twitter at DFSCoachTalk. And then you want to follow our Twitters all throughout the afternoon. I'm at Joe Sarvadi, JoeSarvadi. Andrew is at Language Olympic. And Michael Apotria is at MikeMouse. No, I'm just kidding. Mikeapotria, Mike Apotria. And but at DFS Coach Talks, where you could find all of us are chirping in on there and posting everything and getting that done. So remember, you can hear this 7 days a week. It is a free, in front of the paywall content podcast, which we feel we have one of the best in the industry. You can catch us everywhere podcasts are found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeart, Spotify, and our lovely YouTube. And we do ask that you would take a second, rate, review, subscribe. It's a matter of clicking a few buttons. Hit that little alarm bell on YouTube so you know when one of our new podcasts posts. And again, the appreciation is enormous. If you could take a minute, pop 5 stars on iTunes, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, hit likes, make a little comment if you can. We have a new contest going on that we just announced yesterday, that we are going to draw once a month. We're going to draw a full 1 month free membership to anybody that puts in on iTunes any type of positive comment on there, even if it's just love the podcast, listen every day, something simple like that. Or if you want to write whatever you want to write, that's fantastic. So a free 1 month membership for the NBA full content, all access will be drawn. And we'll do that first drawing in 3 weeks. So you still have a little bit of time to get on there and make some comments and get that going. We also have this weekend are going to be giving away 5 week-long memberships for NBA DFS. You'll see that on Twitter. it'll be tweeted out from our at DFS Coach Talk Twitter regarding if you follow and retweet, you'll qualify for that drawing on Sunday for a free week of All Access NBA. So, again, 3-step process. Listen to our podcast, follow Twitter and all the changes throughout the day, then hunker down that last 30 minutes, watch all the player news, jump in to our Discord that you can sign up for when you're a member. Discord's not any extra fee. We have no extra fees. You jump in and become a member. It's all access. So we're not going to nickel and dime our members whatsoever. Members are pretty fired up. We're 5-1. So today completes the first full week of DFS Coach Talk. So we would love to go to 6-1. That's pretty darn stout if you ask me. So we're going to keep on trying to get that done. So let's finish up. We have 4 games remaining. We have the last 7:30 game. It is the Dallas Mavericks at the San Antonio Spurs. Dallas is -5. It's a 233 total. Implied for Dallas, 119. San Antonio, 114. We know Lucas and Porzingis are playing. We know that Aldridge is out for San Antonio. So it puts a little bit of twist on this game. Dallas is 20th in pace. San Antonio 17th. Defensively, neither team tearing it up. Dallas 19th. San Antonio way down at 26th. So interesting game. I think that you're going to find a lot of people going to Luka tonight. I think that Luka and Harden, I think, will be the top 2 own guys on the slate. What say you, Mr. Hansen?
Well, I do like Luka here. Out of those guys over 10K on DraftKings, he's probably my favorite considering his price. He averages a triple-double against San Antonio. 33, 10.5, and 10.
That's it?
So that's all he does.
What a slacker.
What a bum. So I'll have some exposure to Mr. Luka, and then probably not anything else with Dallas. But on the San Antonio side, I think DeRozan is worth consideration, sort of filling out that roster in that mid-tier range. He's 7K on DraftKings with Aldridge out. And then Pirtle is likely going to be a key value play to look at here with Aldridge out. The last 4 games that Aldridge has been out of the lineup, Pirtle has started, and his minutes have been 35, 22, 26, and 41. And he's had 3 out of 4 games in there where he's really exceeded value. He's only 3.2 on DraftKings, a little bit more on FanDuel at 4K, but I'm going to have a fair amount of exposure to him.
I don't blame you. Is that it for these 2 games?
That's it for those 2 teams, yep.
Well, it hurts me and pains me to say this, but I also like Pirtle tonight just because of the statistical analysis of when Aldridge is out. And Dallas has not done well stopping centers, and Willie Cauley-Stein is still 50-50 because of personal reasons, so he may not be back, and if he is, there's no guarantee that he's going to get very big minutes. Boban hasn't been playing, so it's generally they're going to go smaller, play Porzingis at the 5, which he blocks shots, but he's just not an intimidating space eater in the paint. So Pirtle is that, even though he can shoot the 3 as well. And I think just at the price that he is, with the minutes expectation, it's hard to pass him up. But I'm not like jumping out of my seat over it, that's for sure. DeRozan's a fine play. I mean, the usage generally splits around, goes to some different guys. I think you can certainly consider him. I also think you can consider DeJounte Murray. I mean, he's had multiple games, 5 of his last 7, where he's, in the 40-plus fantasy point spot. So he has been exceeding value pretty consistently as recently. So I like all those guys for the Spurs. I like Luka a lot. I may eat the chalk with everybody else and just accept the fact that if he's going to put 60 or 65 or 70 on the board, it's hard to catch up and get to that. So as of right now, he's in my lineup. But if I have a change of heart later, I may swing to Porzingis, who I think is going to have a good game in this matchup as well. Because Rudy Gay is the only guy that can give Porzingis trouble. He has gotten into his head in the past, but he hasn't been playing that many minutes. I'm not sure what to expect there. So, as of now, I'm leaning towards Luka and really not going with any of the other guys other than the consideration of Porzingis. Okay, 3 games remaining there, Andrew. 8 o'clock game, the only 8 o'clock game. It's interesting. We step ladder these last 3 games. So it'll be, nice little slow sweat throughout the entire evening. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. And that 8 o'clock game is Memphis at Houston. Ding, ding, ding. Probably the highest played game on the slate. It's the highest total. And you've got 2 teams that run. But here's the problem. Houston is an 11.5 point favorite. Is there a blowout factor here? Very much could be. Who does it affect more? I don't think it affects Houston nearly as much because we've stated it probably 72,000 times that D'Antoni does not like to pull his guys even when they're way up. I was amazed. They were up 34 with 4.5 minutes left, and he had Westbrook in the game, who ended up almost getting into a fight, ended in that whole scrum, got thrown out of the game. And, I mean, that's just a perfect recipe of losing a guy for the season. I do not understand his philosophy whatsoever. But I think if a blowout happens, it crushes the Memphis side more. I mean, he's not Jenkins has said all along, and he hasn't, and he's stuck with it. He does not overplay minutes with Jaw or Joe Val or a lot of those guys. But we have Triple J and Brandon Clark out, so that shuffles the deck. I mean, it brings a lot of other guys into play. It makes Joe Val, I think, a really good play because obviously he's going to get guarded by P.J. Tucker. But we've been smoked on this. I said, how can you pass up Gobert? How the hell are they going to guard him? Well, they did. They did a great job against Gobert. And then they did it against the Lakers. How the hell are they going to guard their bigs? And they did. So I don't know if it's just a new style they're playing with pressuring the ball. But I still think Joe Val's got to be a strong consideration. I refuse to believe that they can continue to get away with a 6'4.5" center that isn't going to get schooled in the paint at some point. So that's my thinking there. Dylan Brooks gets a lot of minutes. They're going to want him in there, to try to guard Harden or Westbrook for most places. But offensively, he's super inconsistent, so I'm not real comfortable there. But somebody's got to pick up, the Triple J and Clark points. You wonder if Bruno Caboclo is going to get back into the rotation. That's something we want to read about as the afternoon goes on. But for me right now, I sort of like Joe Val. Have a little asterisk next to DeAnthony Melton. He seems to wiggle his way in when they're a little shorthanded at times in different positions. And he's such a terrific DFS points per minute guy for a guy that doesn't play a ton, that sometimes you can sneak him in there on the cheap and grab 38, DFS points, something like that. The Houston side of the ball, you can easily roster Harden or Westbrook. I think they're both very rosterable here. I would assume Brooks guards Harden, but I don't know that for a fact. So I'm going to read up on it because I very well may use my second pay up for Harden or Westbrook. Luka being one and Harden or Westbrook being the other one. But I want to figure out who's guarding who, and I'm going to try to dig in and find that because Brooks can slow people down, so that is a small concern there. And, I want to see which guy he's guarding. They're both super expensive, so I don't think you can really afford both. But I guess, in some builds on some of the sites you can. But for me, I'm looking Joe Val, maybe Melton, especially in a GPP. And then once I dig deeper, because I haven't found anything yet this morning on either the Harden or Westbrook option. I also like Robert Covington a little bit. He seems to be just embracing and fitting in this role. I mean, it's like sometimes he's playing sort of like almost center and gets some rebounds and blocks. And then, on offense, he's floating out there hitting threes. So he's been a very unique situation. And I like him a lot better than PJ Tucker. Even though Tucker's filled that role well and they've won with the small ball lineup, he hasn't produced very well in DFS. So I would stick more with Covington and then the big boys. Excellent. Anything else? Yep, that's it for you there.
A lot of good stuff there. I want to add a couple points here. On Covington, sure. I'm going to add a stat. 4 straight games over 30 fantasy points. So I agree with you. He's very reliable, feels very comfortable so far. I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Harden over Westbrook. And okay. Harden is cheaper on DraftKings than FanDuel, so some nice savings there. And one guy I want to mention, okay, on the Memphis side, is one guy you didn't mention, Josh Jackson.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to confuse the audience for a minute, so stay with me. But if you look at DraftKings, Jay Jackson, you can get him at 5.8, 4.5, or 3.0.
Wow.
And so that, of course, is a reference to Triple J, who's out. So you don't want to get him in your lineup. No. Josh Jackson, the one you want, is in the middle. He's 4.5. Justin Jackson on Dallas is 3K.
Good Lord.
I think this is a good opportunity to remind everybody, take 5 extra minutes, start a little bit earlier, give yourself the extra time, double check everything. Make sure you get Josh Jackson in the lineup, the guy who's active, not Justin Jackson. And I do want to get him in some lineups. I think he's one of the guys that's going to soak up some of that usage. He got 25 minutes against the Clippers with those guys out and Clark going down. He also had 22 minutes the game before. And here's the thing for Josh Jackson, Coach. Don't you think he should be able to thrive pretty well in a game like this against Houston? I mean, I think if he doesn't do well tonight, he gets 25 minutes or more, they should just send him back to the G League.
I'm with you. I think he's got a lot of talent. He's obviously been a massive head case since day one. You just never know what you're going to get with him. So it's just as likely to me that he comes out and tries to have a huge game and do great to solidify his spot on the team. It's also just as likely he goes out there a little unfocused and just doesn't get involved in the offense much. And, I don't trust him as far as I can throw him, but I think he's a tremendous GPP play. I really do, because he could be a great find, but in cash, I don't have he's not the secret squirrel. I do not have the big nuts to put him in there.
Well
but
said. Yeah.
I will tell you, though, you made a good point. Guys that are flying the last 5 minutes to get a lineup in, I guarantee there are some people that click the wrong Jay Jackson.
Yep, absolutely.
And we're not talking, Jeremiah Jackson from the Jackson 5 either.
No.
Or Jimmy Jackson from the Mavericks, the old Mavericks. Right. So we could go through the Jacksons for quite a while. All right, 2 games left. This last game is going to get a massive amount of interest around the industry. It's the Clippers at the Suns. It is the Clippers a 7-point favorite on the road, 232 over under. You have an implied 119.5 for the Clippers, 112.5 for the Suns. Pace makes this game something you want to play. 8th Clippers, 9th Phoenix. You don't always get 2 in the top 10, so that's back-to-back games Memphis, Houston, Clippers, Phoenix. Those are four of the 9 fastest teams in the league. So it does, really solidify that total. Defensively, though, better than the other game. Clippers are 6th, Phoenix 16th, which isn't too bad. It's funny, as soon as Baines and a few of those guys came back, they started improving on the defensive side right away. So this game's going to get a lot of attention. Is this one you're going to focus on?
Well, I'd like to get some exposure to it just looking at that total, but you mentioned at the top with all those Clippers back in the lineup, I just don't think there's enough usage to go around with the price tag. So okay. I really don't plan to play any Clippers. Maybe Harrell in a one-off. I think he's the safest guy in terms of maintaining his usage with all the new bodies, the new faces. And on the Phoenix side, I'm curious what you think about Oubre being out, how that's going to affect things.
Yeah, no, I think it will. I mean, he's not only an terrific offensive player, it really stings them because, he'd have probably been guarding Paul George. So it shifts everything for Phoenix. I think it gets them into a little trouble there. But I'm with you. As much as I want to jump on this game, and it looks so good in a lot of different angles, the Clippers, if you're going to pay up for Kawhi or George, you got to be pretty damn sure that they're going to blow out, do really well. And with both of them playing, in a game where they could beat the Suns pretty bad, even though they're not playing the best ball right now, you've got all those other big names like, Lukas and Hardens and Westbrook's on the board. It's just hard to pull the trigger for me on George or Kawhi. The ancillary guys, Beverly's coming back from injury, so you don't know exactly what his minutes are going to be. I don't trust the scrub guys like Shamet and Green and all those wastes of roster spots. And I don't like Montrez here because Ayton's in there when he rotates out, and then the Clippers rotate out Zubac. Harrell has to come in and face the lovely Aaron Baines, who can stick it to you pretty good. And there's not very many backup centers in the league that Harrell comes in and faces that are that stout, rebounding and defensive. I think the only guy I consider from the Clippers side here is Lou Williams, because on the contrary, the Phoenix guards off the bench don't defend very well. And, Lou seems to flourish in these up-paced games more than anybody because, he wants to get that shot up as quick as possible. So Lou Williams is definitely on my list today. I'd like to get him in there. Phoenix, it's a lot tougher for me. I mean, I think DeAndre Ayton's just a monster stud. I don't care that Baines is back. I think Ayton's certainly somebody you have to consider. I think he'll do well in this game. But after that, Oubre's out, so they got to shift things. I don't quite trust Mikal Bridges. I don't want any part of Rubio or Booker tonight just because, you're staring those Clippers defensive guards right in the chops with Pat Bev and company there. So I'm not gonna play this game that much, and I think it will be owned. So I hope I have a little bit of a fatter lead here so I don't get stung in this game. But the two guys I'd consider at this point are Lou Williams and DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, and price-wise, Lou Williams $1,000 cheaper on FanDuel, and it's the reverse for Ayton. He's $500 cheaper on DraftKings.
It's bizarre, man. There's no rhyme or reason to it anymore. I mean, the last couple of years, you could pretty much depend on the pricing being consistent and the difference of the pricing on the two being consistent. But now they're completely using different algorithms to come up with their pricing. And it's not like one of them seems dead wrong and the other one's dead right. It's like they split down the middle, some way over or underpriced on one side or the other. It's just sort of a head scratcher. But I'm with you, and I thank you for pointing that out because it makes a guy like Lou Williams a no-brainer on FanDuel, but not sure on DraftKings kind of scenarios. So,
Exactly.
yeah. All right, let's wrap this sucker up. We've got the last 10 o'clock game, the Sweat Hammer game. Not that it's the best DFS style numbers game. You've got Boston on the second night of a back-to-back against the Utah Jazz in the elevation of Utah. So Sting City there on Boston for those things. Utah's a 4.5-point favorite, so it should be a close game. The total is 218.5, low. 111.5 implied for Utah, 107 for Boston. Boston 15th pace, Utah pretty darn slow, 22nd. And then the other fearful thing here is Boston is 4th defensively and Utah 12th. So this is a tough game for me. This was, of all the games on the board, the hardest one for me to determine what I wanted to do. What is your thinking, Mr. Hansen? Maybe I can just copy your thinking and pretend like I had the same thing.
Okay, ready? Here it is. It's going to be easy for you.
Let me write
Ready?
it down.
Okay, write it down. Okay, ready?
Nobody.
Turn on ESPN at 10:30 Eastern. Sit back and enjoy. Just watch the game. It should be a good battle. Two great coaches that you and I know we both appreciate them both.
Yes.
Tough back-to-back for the Celtics. Those guys don't do very well on back-to-backs.
No.
And, tough defenses on both sides. I may only play one value play here in tournaments. Okay, I know you're not going to want to play him in cash, but Enes Kanter is 3.2 on DraftKings. He got 17 minutes last night in Portland, and that's all we need from him is we need some minutes. Give me 20 minutes or so. And if you put him and Pirtle in a lineup on DraftKings, then you can go up and get multiple studs. So that might be it for me. I really don't like any of these prices, or the matchup in general.
It's a tough one. There's no doubt. I mean, eye test from yesterday, the last half especially, Jason Tatum was absolutely unconscious. I mean, he couldn't miss. It was one of those where you didn't even have to look at the basket, and it was going in. So I do like Tatum, but he's so expensive. He's overpriced.
Exactly.
But I do like him. I think he's going to have a terrific game here. He's my favorite Celtic in this game. Love the way Marcus Smart played yesterday. And I don't think Utah's backcourt is that awesome defensively. I really don't. Mike Conley's played okay, but not against the backcourt defense of Celtics. Want no part of that. Don't even really want Donovan Mitchell in this place. I've been playing him because he's underpriced for being the superstar on that team. But I don't feel comfortable, even though it's a back-to-back in Utah with Mitchell. If I had to play a flyer here and I wanted to go cheap, you're going to think I've lost my marbles, but I sort of like Daniel Tice. He has consistently not just been good, he's been really good. I mean, we're talking 35, 42, 38. I mean, he is scoring fantasy points like a starting center in the NBA. And he's really dominated the minutes over Kanter recently. And this is a weird stat, but it's an edge that's been working for me. Yes, Gobert is the defensive player of the year. Yes, Gobert leads the league in blocks. But let me explain something to you. Dig into those stats. He rarely blocks the guy that takes it right at him. Even if it's a guard, he always gets all of his blocks because he's the best off the ball help blocker than by far in anybody in the league. Whiteside does an okay job at it, but it's really not close. If he's playing his guy and he's sloughing off him a couple feet and somebody from the other team drives, he's going to come over and get a piece of that ball. But if you feed it to a guy that's going right at him to the hoop, his dexterity side to side is not that good. It's great coming over from a peripheral vision standpoint to get a block. And if you watch, that's almost all his blocks. But I think Tice can pound a few in there on him, take it up right hand, left hand, and he's going to have like no ownership because it's against Gobert. But, he could be a guy that could help me make sure I can get a Harden and Luka on my lineup. And I just feel like he has a pretty safe floor in a game where I think he can do a decent job, and people aren't going to look at the reasoning behind the positioning on the floor and how that works. They're just going to look more at the statistics. So that's my secret squirrel, buddy. I waited till the last game. I think he's a great GPP player, and I may have hashtag big nuts and use him in one of my 2 cash lineups as well. Yes.
Yeah.
And
one other point I'll add in there is nice breakdown is Tice also shoots the 3-pointer. So
that's correct.
He's not like a typical big going against Utah who's only trying to do damage in the paint. And he's been playing with a lot more confidence this year. And before we want to wrap up, I want to mention one more player in this game because we love narratives. So you got to mention Gordon Hayward going back to Utah.
Yeah.
The problem is it's a back-to-back, and that's just not the best scenario for him. The last 2 games in a back-to-back for Hayward, he hasn't even scored 10 real points.
I know.
So, maybe he digs deep and comes up with something special for Utah, but I guess I'm not counting on it this time around, even though I'd like to.
Yeah, I looked at the narrative there and just couldn't dig in. I don't trust Hayward on a back-to-back against a better team in Utah as far as defensively than most that he plays, the elevation, the whole 9 yards. I could see him having 20, 25 fantasy points, but that isn't going to help you whatsoever.
Nope.
And I don't think it's worth a risk there. But I wish I had the money there to play Tatum because I do think he's gonna be the one Celtic that can go sort of bonkers here.
Yeah, just too pricey.
Yeah. Why do we have to have salary effect?
I know. Come on.
All right, my brother. Let's close this down. We gave all kinds of different ideas, plays all over the board. We never give out all chalk. You certainly don't do that. We're more contrarian than anybody out there. We do it all organically. We don't look at other ownerships and all that stuff. We do these podcasts raw on what we're seeing. That's what sort of DFS Coach Talk's all about. We're building different lineups. We're not putting it into an optimizer or cruncher to kick out that stuff. Not that that's a negative thing, and for you guys that do it out there, more power to you. But we're building some hand-built lineups off of, yes, a plethora of statistics, but also that, the coach's eye, the eye test, who's doing what in certain situations, the game within the game of, again, Gobert having 76% of his blocks coming off the ball, stuff like that people may not dig to that level of detail. So that's what we want to try to give to you guys every day. We will formulate our final lineups. I'll be posting my 2 cash, and Andrew will be posting his 2 GPP at DFSCoachTalk.com. If you sign up, you get into our Discord. We will be posting those in the Discord 30 minutes before lock. So that is it, my man. Any final words?
Let's have some fun tonight. I enjoyed it, and let's get after it.
Let's go get it. We want to thank you for joining us for another episode of DFS Coach Talk podcast. For my fellow NBA pros, Mike Apotria, and my main man that did an awesome job today on the show with me, Andrew Hansen. I am Coach. We'll look to catch you again tomorrow when we crush it in NBA DFS.